to you. So today I'm coming to you with a video talking about my favorite books of 2020. Yes, this is coming late. I'm sorry about that. But it was really hard to narrow down this list because there were so many phenomenal books that I read in 2020. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about my top 10. I'm going to go up from 10 all the way to number 1. I'll leave timestamps in the description if you just want to skip to my top 5 or my top 1. My favorite book of 2020 was so hard to decide. So incredibly hard. I was between like 4 options. So this is going to be an interesting one. I hope you guys stick around. At number 10, we are going to have The Gravity of Us by Cal. At number 10, we are going to have The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. I read this as a part of Romanceathon, this readathon that I participated in July, I'm pretty sure it was. So definitely go check out that vlog. It was a lot of fun. I recently held an interview with this author, which was amazing. So go check that out up here. But this book is about Cal Lewis, who's really famous on this online app called Flash Fame, where he basically just tells news stories. Yeah, he has millions and millions of followers there. He's doing pretty good, and he just got this job at BuzzFeed, so he is looking pretty set for life until his dad is accepted to be this astronaut as a part of a NASA mission, and so he and his family have to change locations from New York or Brooklyn to Texas, and Cal has to drop his Flash Fame map as a part of the regulations that NASA has set for them. At this space center, Cal and his family have to become the perfect American family because they're going to be watched by millions of people through this online network called Star Watch. And Cal meets Lewis, and they have a queer romance, and the book goes from there. It talks a lot about depression, anxiety, space, queerness, love, meaning of life, social media. It just goes into so many interesting and complex topics. It is such a fun ride. I love being with these characters, and it just was everything. It was amazing. At number 9, I have a book that I read. It was one of the last books I read in 2020, and that is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. This is a historical fiction / fantasy about Nannerl Mozart, who is the forgotten sister of Wolfgang Mozart, the famous composer, and basically talks about how she was also really good at writing songs, but she was never given the recognition and was never able to get the recognition because she was a woman in the 1800s, and so after a certain age, she had to marry off, and she was all but forgotten. And it basically follows her and her brother as children. They travel around the country performing for other people, and it talks about their musical career, but it also talks about Nannerl's desire to be remembered beyond her death. She really wants to leave a mark on this world, and that is going to come at a price, one she's willing to pay when she discovers the Kingdom of Back with her brother Mozart, in which she meets a very mysterious prince fairy who has a deal to strike with her. This book, oh my god. The writing was so beautiful. It was so lyrical. I was so enveloped in the way Marie Lu put together words. I just got so enveloped in 18th century Europe, and I just loved being in this world. The characters were so well written and so drawn out. Nannerl was such an interesting main protagonist, and the fantasy world and the adventures inside of it were also just so interesting. And the plot twist at the end was so cool, and I just did not see that coming. And overall, I just highly recommend this book if you're into historical fiction fantasy with a really unique premise, and it talked about being remembered, about death, about life, about family and the importance of it. The dad figure was so complex and interesting, and the mom figure. I just love this book. At number 8, we have this hefty book, The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. When I was thinking about my top 10 books of 2020, I did not expect to put this as high as it is, but this book is really good. And I feel like I don't talk about it as much on my channel as I probably should. If you do not know, it follows the perspective of death. literally death in Nazi Germany, and it follows Liesel. After she finds a book at her brother's gravesite, she just falls in love with words and eventually begins stealing books from like Nazi fires and just becomes a book thief. However, these are really dangerous times, especially for Jews, and so when Liesel's family have to hide and protect a Jewish man, Liesel is thrust into this incredibly complex and cruel world, and she suffers a lot through this book. She learns a lot about the meaning of life and death. It's written in such beautiful prose. It's just so creative. The way it's told is just so incredibly creative. It's a long book, but it definitely does not feel like I flew through this book. It was just so incredibly good. I love the illustrations in it. I love the characterizations of Liesel and her family and the Jewish man. And I also just love learning about Nazi Germany and those times. This book also deals with themes of like why words are important and why we should protect the books. And I just really loved that theme being explored. And the 7th best book that I read in 2020 is one of the 2 graphic novels that I read in 2020, and that is The 100 Nights of Hero by Isabel Greensburg. This is basically a take on the 100 Tales of the Arabian Nights, and it's so hard to describe this book. Like, it's so many different stories enveloped in one. I'm literally just reading off of my review here, but I love the commentary on storytelling and oral traditions, meta dialogues about plot symmetry and tropes, how the stories were told over time, and the bias that fed into them. Like, this book dealt with so many interesting topics. It had such great illustrations, and it was just so enveloping. I just could not put this book down. It was so good. I just feel like I keep saying it's so good. I have no words that will accurately describe how much I love all of these 10 books. Just go read them. And I was so worried because I don't read graphic novels a lot, something that I'm hoping to change in 2021. And I was so worried about how we were going to characterize these characters and how we were still going to get a very detailed world. I failed to recognize the power of illustrations, and I love that this was the graphic novel that I did read. At number 6, we have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I'm currently reading Concrete Rose. I'm 242 pages into it. By the time I have published this video, I will have read and given 5 stars to that brilliant book. It is so good. But The Hate You Give, what can I say about this book that has not already been said? It is so incredibly important. It tackles themes of racism and police brutality, all with characters that are so unbelievably well developed, especially from a debut author. Angie Thomas just really has a way of characterizing each of her characters to make them both different and so alike. And she just really makes you empathize and feel for your main characters. Her writing is so simplistic yet so quick. It is so beautiful. The metaphors she envelops and really imbues into her stories are just so unconsciously like efficient and effective. Her storytelling is just beautiful. She's a master at her craft, and I have no doubt that Angie Thomas is one of my favorite authors of all time. Every single book I've read of hers has been 5 stars. Like, she's a goddess in young adult literature. It is Angie Thomas's world, and we are just living in it. So now we arrive at my top 5. And at number 5, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by, I was about to say Angie Thomas. V.E. Schwab. This was probably the most hyped book of 2020, in YA at least. I know Rhythm of War came out in 2020, and if you're really into adult fantasy, yeah, that was probably one of your more anticipated releases. Wait, this is technically adult fantasy as well, right? Whatever. Oh. This is basically a book about a woman who strikes a deal with the devil that allows her to live forever. However, nobody will ever remember her after they turn away from her. And so it talks about, of course, being remembered. And so we follow Addie as she goes through these years, not being remembered, but just seeing the marvels of humanity, learning a lot about herself and about the cruelties and just moralities of the world, until eventually in 2014, someone remembers her, and we just follow the story from there as we learn more about the boy who remembers her and Addie herself. And it is just written in such beautiful language. The devil is not in any relationship with Addie. I feel like lots of people have that misconception going, and like, no, that's not how it works. But the devil is such an interesting character. His and Addie's conversations were just so tense and thrilling. I always looked forward to them. V.E. Schwab has such a way with the words, and it is unparalleled to me. Maybe John Green. It is unparalleled to me in young adult literature just how well she is able to put together words. From her descriptions of places, her sentiments on life. She is so good at writing. The curse was so developed, and you can see that she put a lot of work into kind of developing it and making it what it is. I just loved seeing the world throughout the years. This is a book that V.E. Schwab has been working on for such a long time, and it really shows. And it got so tense at the end, and I just was living for every second of it. Ooh, the top 4. This was the hardest for me to get through, to just sort these top 4, because they were undoubtedly my top 4 of this year. I just didn't know where to place them. So at number 4, I have A Map of Days by Ransom Riggs. This is the 4th book in the Miss Peregrine series, and just the writing in this book, the intrigue, the fast action, the characters and how they develop. Just, maybe this isn't the most philosophical book of all time, like maybe The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue or The Hate You Give or The 100 Nights of Hero. But it is just so much fun to read. This was the culmination for me of everything that Ransom Riggs has been building as part of his writing arsenal for years, and he just did it so well in this book. The ending was perfect. I love how our characters developed, and this book is everything. It's so good. Words cannot describe how good this book is. Number 3, I have A Darker Shade of Magic. Yes, 2 V.E. Schwab books make my top 5. What can I say? She's pretty good at writing. I just loved how detailed the fantasy world was. Of course, the writing was really great, and I just loved mainly the plot, first of all, how intriguing and developed it was. It just always kept me turning the page. It was so interesting, but also the relationship between our characters, the platonic relationship between them. They were just so funny to read. They always had such great chemistry, it felt like, and they were both just so flawed in totally different ways, and it was just so interesting to read them. I cannot wait to actually read the second book. I'm scared to read it because The Conference of the Birds ruined A Map of Days, and I'm scared A Gathering of Shadows will ruin A Darker Shade of Magic. But like, the problem is, if I love a book that's part of a series, I feel like the book after that will just always let me down, which is I need to learn how to lower my expectations accordingly. I know. Okay. Top 2. At number 2, we have Frankly in Love by David Yu. It was so hard to choose between this and the number 1 book of my entire year. It was neck and neck. This is about Frank Lee, hence the name Frankly in Love, who gets caught up in this fake dating scheme because of this expectation that his Korean parents have for him to date and eventually marry a Korean girl. The dating scheme is going well. He thinks he got it all figured out. And then life throws him a curveball, and he doesn't really know if he knows anything about love at all, and he has to try to find himself again. He learns a lot about love in this book, but he also this book isn't mainly a love story. Yes, it was marketed that way because it would get a lot of purchases, but it's so much more than that. It has such great characters who learn a lot about themselves through this book. It deals with themes of family, culture, death, grief, meaning. It is so emotional. It's so powerful. It made me cry. And the writing is just so unique in this book. Like, it is unlike anything I've ever read in YA. It's just so unique and different. This book is an emotional train wreck, and this book really put me through it. And if you follow my channel, you will have narrowed down, I hope, that my favorite book of 2020 was The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. I don't even know what to say. It's such a perfect allegory on social media. So emotionally packed. It has such a unique writing style. I love the characters. I love the fantasy world. I love how much Todd grows in this book. Like, there are real sacrifices that he needs to make in this book. It's not just ones that we know they will work out for the characters in the end, because they don't work out for the characters in the end. So many things go wrong for Todd in this book. And he learns so much about himself. And this book is perfect. That's honestly the perfect book in my eyes. Like, there's nothing about this book that I can say it does not do good in. Like, it is just the perfect amount of weird. Words cannot describe how much I love this book. So yeah, guys, that is my top 10 books of 2020. It was hard. I still don't even know if I agree with some of my decisions. Like, I'm okay with them now, but I might just not agree with them in a few weeks or even days. It was so incredibly hard to make some of the decisions that I made. I left some books out that definitely deserve to be on this list. But I mean, that's my list. I've already filmed this video and I am not refilming. So yeah. But if you guys enjoyed this video, leave it a like. Comment down below what your favorite books of 2020 were, if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were on them. Subscribe. I post fun books videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Turn those post notifications on. It helps me a lot, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!